my life had become so small that I thought my value to another human being was limited by whether I had drugs and alcohol or not. Why else would they want to spend time with me? What else would we do? And so that means my life had become very, very narrow focused, very narrow focused. It had become dependent upon or focused around drugs and alcohol primarily as the thing. So once again, thank you so much for joining and being willing to ask a question. And I'm wondering which of the three of you would like to chime in first and be the brave one and come forward with your inquiry. Well, we've got Dane. Dane has raised his hand.
Great. Thank you very much, Tommy. It's such a blessing to be in the circle. I've been listening to this podcast since it came out, and it's a real pleasure to be a part of it.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So my question revolves around how to navigate with the people in my life, my intention to get sober. As somebody who struggles with multiple forms of addiction, I found that subconsciously, since I was a teenager, I've been seeking out other people who had a similar relationship with drugs and alcohol. I think I felt a kinship with people who drank as much as I did and enjoyed using drugs like I did. They were fun, exciting, spontaneous, carefree. However, when I felt ready to put this life behind me, I still had that circle of friends who were immersed in that life. When I began my journey into recovery, I was very uncertain of how to share with everyone that I had a desire to quit drinking and using drugs. I felt like I was living a double life in a way where I felt very comfortable being my true self with my new friends in recovery, but at the same time fraudulent with all the people in my life before I made the decision to get sober. I didn't want to expose these parts of my new life for some reason. Maybe I felt afraid of how they would react. I would, do things like I'd go on a walk away from everyone in order to call my sponsor, make sure my big book wasn't in plain view, omit as many details as possible when I went to meetings or went to retreats with Recovery 2.0, redirect conversations away from drugs and alcohol when people would bring them up because I didn't want to reveal that I had a problem and, that I wasn't partaking in this anymore out of fear of what they'd think. So as I ventured deeper into the world of recovery, it became such an integral part of who I am and informed every aspect of my life in a way. I started to feel exhausted trying to maintain this huge secret and lost on how I should approach it with the people in my life. There was one time where I was at a meeting and I inquired about this uncertainty with a guy that I had met. And I shared that I had just recently moved to the area I live in now and wasn't sure if I could still maintain all these friendships with the people in my life before, because it seemed like my entire world before having this intention was people who struggle the same way I did. And without missing a beat, he said, okay, you've done the geographic. Now you need to go through your phone and delete every contact of your friends that used to drink and used to do drugs with. And I was so surprised that he had said that. And I thought, well, at this point, I might as well just get a new phone, because I think I'm going to have to delete every single one of my contacts. And I wasn't sure if this was the right approach because there were a lot of friends I had that didn't struggle the same way I did. And I don't think they would identify as an alcoholic or addict. And I was wondering, should I not continue a relationship with them either? And so I guess I'm curious about your thoughts as far as how I should approach communicating this with the people who drink and use drugs, that I'm sober at this point. And, how do you suggest I communicate to these friends I'm in recovery? Can I still maintain a friendship with them? And if so, how would that friendship look? So thank you very much for taking my question. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Dane, so much. This is an incredible, profound inquiry at the heart of that moment when we're moving from the way things have been to the way things are going to be. A massive shift taking place as a person steps onto the path of recovery. It's a seismic shift in someone's life. Quantum. Monumental. And of course, there's going to be a discussion of environments and the company that we keep. So I want to unpack this inquiry from a variety of different perspectives, because as with all inquiries, there is no one way to answer this, and there is no one answer. There is no right and wrong here. And so all we can do is to explore. So thank you for this impetus to explore this very important topic. So the way that you think about yourself, the way that you see yourself in the world, the way that you connect with certain kinds of people, the places where you end up, literally the physical places where you end up in the world, is a reflection of your level of consciousness. It's a reflection of your consciousness itself. So, for example, when I used to drink alcohol, I would end up in places where people drank alcohol. It seems so obvious. It was on my mind. I lived in a world where I wanted to drink alcohol. And in order to drink alcohol, I would go to places where people drank alcohol. And there I would find community, friendships. I would find connection. I would find other people who were in a similar consciousness to me. Not good, not bad, not right, not wrong. Interesting that we would all be drawn to the same places. If you didn't drink alcohol and had no interest in that, you wouldn't normally or very often frequent a bar. You might watch sports or meet somebody there or eat some food while you were there, but it wouldn't be the place that you sort of ended up time after time. When I smoked pot, it appeared to me that everyone else in the world smoked pot as well, because I surrounded myself with people who were sort of in the same frequency as me. They thought about things, saw the world, and were a certain kind of person who would smoke pot. And I was a certain kind of person who would smoke pot. And so because everyone I was around also smoked pot, I just assumed, like, isn't everybody doing this? You know, at least it appeared to me that was true. Of course, I understood that not every single human being in the world was smoking pot, but it just seemed like the great majority of people were. And it's the funniest thing. When I got sober and started going to meetings, 12-step meetings or recovery meetings, I all of a sudden was in a room with people who were also into recovery and abstaining from drugs and alcohol, and who were interested in the same things I was interested in, which was essentially living a better life than the life I had experienced. I was interested in transforming myself. I wanted to have different experiences than the ones that I was having. How did I know that? Because I was suffering. Because I was in pain, psychic pain. I didn't wake up one day and just very happily proclaim myself an addict, alcoholic, and that I needed to go to meetings, and wouldn't this be a wonderful thing to do now? No. I was suffering terribly. I needed to change. My heart told me that. In my innermost self, there was something off about the way I had been living my life. The way I was still thinking, my consciousness was still delivering me to these same addresses with these same types of people doing the same types of things. And I found that it no longer was working for me. Something needed to change. And so we reached a bottom. A bottom is a sacred space, a sacred moment where a person is finally willing to tell the truth. And the truth was this: I can't go on living like this, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how else to be. And some of the first concerns that came up for me in realizing this, like I have to change my life, but I don't know how to do it. One of the first concerns was, who is going to hang out with me? Who am I going to spend my time with? Everybody I know smokes pot. Everybody I know parties like I do. If I don't have drugs or alcohol at my house, who will come hang out with me? Why would you bother? Now I see you smiling, and I understand in retrospect that that might seem funny. But it also makes me sad that my life had become so small that I thought my value to another human being was limited by whether I had drugs and alcohol or not. Why else would they want to spend time with me? What else would we do? And so that means my life had become very, very narrow focused, very narrow focused. It had become dependent upon or focused around drugs and alcohol primarily as the thing. Well, here I am realizing I have to change my life, and I have a sneaking suspicion that in this new life I need to have, drugs and alcohol are not going to have a place there. And if they don't have a place there, then who am I going to be around? Who are my tribe? Who will understand me? How will I explain myself to the people that I've been partying with really hard and really championing this lifestyle? I was a champion of the lifestyle of taking a lot of drugs and alcohol, smoking an unbelievable amount of pot pretty much all the time. So you see, this is a conundrum for somebody who feels so connected to people, who's so social. We're all interdependent social creatures. We need a tribe. And when you've had a tribe, and that tribe has gathered around the sacrament of drugs and alcohol, if you take that away, what is the glue that will keep you together? Who will be there? That's the first thing. It's important to look at this from the understanding of the fear. I am not going to fit in. I don't know who I am without drugs and alcohol. I don't know who to hang out with. And by the way, I still love all these people that I've been hanging out with. And you know what? My love for them wasn't all about the drugs and alcohol. It was deeper than that. I actually do care about these people, and I believe they actually care about me. Now, there's a massive transformation taking place in one's life when they get onto this path of recovery. Who's going to go along for the ride with me? Well, the very quick answer is no one. You're going to have to go on that ride for yourself and by yourself. However, who will be supportive of me on this ride I've decided to take? Who will I want to interact with? And who can I support in their movement towards greater health, greater wellness, greater awakening, greater truthfulness? Of course, we don't see our movement towards recovery at the beginning like that. When we're getting sober at the beginning, we're like, wow, my life is just fucked up. And I can't go on like this. And my God, I'm in so much trouble. But truthfully, even though you may not see it yet, you're moving towards truth. You're moving towards health. You're moving according to your own heart. And even though you may think you have a choice, really you don't. Once you realize you have to make this change, you can't unrealize it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then you'll be in that in-between phase between using and recovery. Acting out still in addictive patterns and getting on a path of recovery. And that in-between place, I can't think of a more painful place on this planet, of a more painful state of mind. So at some point, we make the decision. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have to jump. I'm standing at the precipice, and I have to take the step into my recovery. I have to do it. Now, this is a one day at a time process. I do not believe that a person necessarily has to actively end all of their existing relationships, write a letter to everybody. This is what I'm doing. I'm sorry that you can't be a part of my life now. You still do drugs. I don't. We'll never see each other again. No, that's a little bit too formal of a process for someone like me. However, if you want to be successful on the path of recovery and you've been addicted to drugs and or alcohol, abstinence from drugs and alcohol are going to be a first necessary step. And since we're in the habit of using drugs and alcohol, probably every day, but at least in regular intervals, for a little while, it's going to be difficult to break that habit. How can we be more successful? We have to have strategy. We're going to need to tilt the odds in our favor. And one of the ways that we do that is we change the environments where we used to use. And we change some of our relationships in the sense of we might not go join our friends at the bar. We might go to a meeting instead. We might start to build a new community of friends who are embracing themselves a path of recovery, who are into abstinence from drugs and alcohol, and who are really working on this phase of development together. Incredibly powerful to surround ourselves with people who are in that consciousness, the consciousness of what's being born through you. Or you can serve the old way. Go to the bar, put yourself in the same environment, feel the same cravings, and try to be in a bar with your friends who you used to drink with and not drink. Just sit there for a while. Be the one guy who doesn't drink. Normally, it's an unbelievably uncomfortable place to be. And I can remember in my personal life when I was in that in-between phase and I put myself in an environment where people were using drugs and I was so uncomfortable. And there was a person who was a little bit tipsy. Honestly, they were not completely wasted. They were just tipsy and having a really good time. And that tipsy person having a really good time looked at me and said, "You really used to be more relaxed when you drank." Ooh, cut deep. Wow. Painful. For someone who's in that in-between place, that was a hard thing for me to hear. I somehow miraculously made it through the night without using. And the next morning I was so grateful I didn't. But I remember thinking, wow, that's painful. I need to get out of this in-between phase and I need to commit to this thing so I can find a way to be truly great here. So you will have certain friends that you're particularly close with. And at the right moment, in the right way, at the right time, you might have a conversation with one or two or three of those friends. And you might tell them the truth. I need you to know about something that I'm working on in my life. I'm having an experiment. I'm not drinking right now. I'm not going to use for the next foreseeable amount of time. I just wanted you to know because you mean a lot to me and I just wanted you to know what I was going through. Now, when you do that with somebody who is insecure in their own drinking, you are going to trigger them. You're going to be like a mirror for them. Your decision not to drink is going to challenge their decision to drink. And it's going to be difficult. Even if you're in a conversation with somebody who's very secure in themselves, they still might think to themselves, wow, that's a really interesting thing. I wonder if I'm supposed to be doing that. Or some other collection of thoughts of questioning themselves and their own behavior. But the most insecure people and the ones who are challenged, the ones who really struggle and who are really attached to their drinking, are going to be downright threatened by your decision not to drink. And in many cases, they're not going to want to support you. They're going to be off-put. And they're not going to want to support you in your process of transformation. And while you may love those people, for at least that period when you're really working on this thing, you might make a mental note to yourself, this is a person that I can't be around right now. It won't be good for me. And that's okay. You're not saying I'm better than this person. I'm less than this person. You're just simply saying I'm moving in a different direction and I need to be around people that can support me right now and with whom I can resonate in my newfound consciousness. The consciousness of what wants to be born through me. This part of me that is calling out to be born. Your heart and your soul saying, move forward. Keep going. Don't go back. Build a life of greater truth. Your greatest truth might be that for you to be drinking is not ultimately going to lead you where you need to go. Maybe for that person, their drinking is going to lead them where they need to go. More than not, however, you will find that if you stay steady and you stay strong and you communicate with just a few people, your closest of the close, and you continue to put yourself in environments with people who are clean and sober and who are working on building a better life for themselves, that eventually the people that you were afraid of losing as friends will one day come to you and say something like, hey, what are those meetings you've been going to? Could we possibly sit down, and have a cup of coffee and talk about something? Like, I'm struggling a little bit in my life. Or they might say to you, God, you look really amazing. Like, what have you been up to? And that will have been important for you to receive those inquiries from people, because that will mean that you moved out of the in-between and you're now really doing the work. And it's no longer about losing a tribe or losing a group of people. You gained a group of people. Most importantly, you gained yourself. And being in that self-confidence of, it's more important to me to listen to my heart and seek out the other people that are doing that than for me to remain in the painful place of not living up to who I'm supposed to be in order to stay with a group of people who perhaps are also living in such a way where they don't get to be all that they get to be, all that they could be. And so really what we're talking about here is the seeking of oneself, the seeking of one's truth, the difficult decisions that come up because we are listening to the calling from within, which is challenging some of our relationships and challenging what we know to exist today. It's stepping into the unknown. It's, oh my goodness, I can't think of anything more frightening and more difficult. And I know that you understand it because you asked this inquiry. Well, I'll tell you a story from when I was getting out of treatment. For me, my community, the community of people that I knew really before I went to treatment, the biggest community, the most loving community that I had known was the community of the Grateful Dead and Deadheads. And as you know, that's a place where there are incredible amounts of drugs, a lot of partying, a professional level of partying, one might say. And I fit in beautifully there. And the music meant so much to me, and the experiences with those people meant so much to me. And we experienced such love and such depth that I really needed to know for myself that those relationships were not about drugs and alcohol. And the only way I could know was to become a sober person and to let drugs and alcohol go from my life and then return to that scene. Who would support me in my newfound journey? Who would I be a threat to? Who would be a threat to me? Would I still have the same love and the same joy with these people? And of course, the answer is yes. Love is love. True love is true love. And there were relationships that were maybe more based around drugs and alcohol, and those relationships just fell to the side. But I would tell some people in my community, especially the ones who had maturity and depth, I would say, I just went to rehab, and I'm trying this life sober now. I go to meetings, I'm that guy, and then I'd sort of sheepishly wait for what they might say to me. And most people were like, yeah, cool. Right on. Let's go to the show. Let's dance. Let's do what we always did. And they understood to respect sort of the boundary with me. And I was also going to 12-step meetings at these concerts I was going to. Because in the Grateful Dead scene, they had this wonderful group called the Wharf Rats that had meetings at set break. And for those early years of recovery, I was going to those meetings. So I'd go to a concert sober. I'd go with sober people. I'd get to interact with friends of mine who were still using drugs. And we'd look at each other in the eyes and smile and laugh and play. And it was all the same. But there was a certain moment when I would break away and I'd go to those meetings. And I'd be with the people who had decided to be, who needed to be or decided to be in that new frequency. So I found that I had developed a new community. Many members from my old community still were my dear, incredible friends. So many of them ended up getting sober later after I did. So many of them came along for the ride, and it was the most beautiful thing. And I want to tell you that on Sunday nights, there's a group of people that I've known for, literally more than 30 years, 35 years, longer than you've been on the planet. And they get together for a sort of an old friend 12-step meeting every Sunday night. And the history there is extraordinary, and the stories there are extraordinary, and there's no way to explain to you what that means to us. And there's such a bigger world than we can imagine when we first get sober. People that want and need someone like you in their life. And relationships that can be built out of this newfound consciousness and this newfound way of being. The relationships are so powerful, so important. And with recovery, you found a group of people that can speak to each other so deeply, so honestly about things that would make other people's toes curl up in their shoes. You can really go deep. And it's like this mutual commitment that I'm willing to accept and to present to you within an appropriate container the truth about my experience as a person in recovery. And I'm willing to sit here as a witness to yours. And the power of that, I can't overstate it. So there's no question that there's awkwardness in the transition. There's no question that there's difficult emotions, but what you're doing is you're breaking out of these unwritten agreements between you and the rest of the barrel of monkeys. And you're climbing up out of the barrel of monkeys, and the other monkeys might not like it. And you're breaking out of those old agreements. And the old agreement is, I'm going to party with you. When we get together, we're going to party. That's just what we do. And we'll have each other in this way. And we'll stay in this frequency. These are the unwritten laws. And when you make a decision to get onto a path of recovery, you're breaking out of that. You're writing a new agreement for yourself. And the agreement is between you and your understanding of spirit, between you and your own heart, between you and your soul. And you're stepping into that new agreement, and you're saying to the people that you've been with, I don't love you any less than I've ever loved you. I'm moving in the direction that I must move. And if you can support me in that move, I sure want to support you in your move forward into your truth. But for a while, you might not be seeing me at the bar. We might not be hanging out when you're partying. I might need to be over here with this other group of people, being a sober person and going deep in that way. And by the way, the door's always open. So these are some of the things that occur to me in your inquiry. And I really want to underline for anybody listening that the suffering that takes place if you decide to stay in using drugs and alcohol because of the fear of being alone is painful. It's so painful. We have to listen to our heart. And thank God there's so much support, so much love, so much recovery out here. So tell me, young Dane, what comes up for you as you hear me explore this inquiry that you've brought to the table?
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much. It's such a powerful message. And I smile just because I resonate so much with what you say. And it's like you're reading my mind. It's so important for someone in early recovery to hear this guidance from someone that's been on the path longer. And for that, I'm very thankful. So thank you, Tommy.
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to say the life that I have in recovery is not a dull life. It's an exciting, vibrant, thrilling adventure through this life. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so it's easy for someone to think, I'm giving up the way that I used to have fun, and therefore there won't be fun anymore. Or I'm giving up the people to whom I've related, and therefore I won't relate to anybody anymore. Nothing could be further from the truth. And it takes a leap of faith to go there and vigilance to stay there. Highly recommended. Please stay on the path. You're just the brightest light. I'm so delighted that you came and sat in this circle with us today. Thank you.